Welcome to the Dr. Gundry podcast, where Dr. Stephen Gundry shares his groundbreaking research from over 25 years of treating patients with diet and lifestyle changes alone. Dr. Gundry and other wellness experts offer inspiring stories, the latest scientific advancements, and practical tips to empower you to take control of your health and live a long, happy life.
One of the things I highly recommend for weight loss and longevity is intermittent fasting. But if you've tried it and it didn't work, I might be able to tell you why. That's right, today I let you in on some of the most common mistakes people make during intermittent fasting that can actually lead to weight gain. After you hear these, I think you'll want to give it another go. I also unveil a common mistake people make when it comes to coffee. And these cultural norms may be robbing you of coffee's spectacular benefits. But fear not, for today I share some simple tricks that will make your coffee delicious while maximizing all the health benefits it has to offer. Plus, I dive into one of America's favorite foods, butter. Now I know what you're thinking, Dr. G, don't take my butter away. Not so fast, you just have to know what type of butter. Recently, there's been a buzz around nicotinamide riboside, or NR, and its incredible longevity benefits. Well, brace yourselves. There's a new NR supplement in town that's about to change the game. And guess what? You're one of the first to know. ProHealth just unveiled a groundbreaking NR supplement packing the highest FDA-approved dose of genuine NR chloride you can get. And that's not all. They've gone the extra mile by adding TMG to recharge those essential methyl groups drained by NR and NAD+ boosters. And TMG brings some fantastic health perks on its own. Countless peer-reviewed clinical studies have shown NR's prowess, boosting NAD+ levels by a whopping 40 to 60% in just 6 weeks. For an exclusive listener discount and more information, go to prohealth.com and use code GUNDRY. How many times have you juggled a busy schedule all week and then you couldn't find the time to hit the grocery store? I know I've been there. But I've got good news. There's a simple solution to streamline this regular chore, Thrive Market. Thrive Market is a one-stop shop for everything from organic groceries and non-toxic cleaning supplies to biodynamic wine and skincare must-haves. Imagine having all your local store offers, but with up to 30% off on your favorite health brands. And it's all delivered right to your doorstep. They have some of my favorite brands like Otto's cassava flour, Miracle Noodles, and Primal Kitchen salad dressings. And you won't believe how much I save on each order. The best part? By joining Thrive Market, you're not only getting groceries, you're joining a community of over 1 million members, and you're also helping a family in need with your membership. Ready to make a change? Get ready for convenient, high-quality, and affordable groceries, all brought to you by Thrive Market. And here's the cherry on top. When you sign up using my link, you'll unlock $80 in free groceries. To get $80 in free groceries, go to thrivemarket.com/Gundry podcast.
Now, have you been fasting or meal skipping with little to no results? You're not alone. If you've read my book, Unlocking the Keto Code, you now know that 50% of normal weight people are what we call metabolically inflexible. This means that they are actually insulin resistant, which quite frankly is the same as pre-diabetic. This means that they have a high fasting insulin level. That means that they cannot make a switch from burning sugar as a fuel to burning free fatty acids as a fuel because they can't release fat from fat cells. And we'll get into that in a minute. Now, even worse, 88% of overweight people are insulin resistant and metabolically inflexible, and 99% of obese people are insulin resistant and metabolically inflexible. So, if you're in that category, and the vast majority of Americans are, one of the problems is that your mitochondria are dependent on using sugar as a fuel. One of our problems is we use insulin as a key to taking extra sugar and extra protein and delivering it into muscle cells to use as a fuel. And if muscle cells are hungry, it's easy to unlock the door and deliver the fuel. But the vast majority of us are resistant to the action of insulin. They're not listening to the sales pitch. So insulin instead takes the extra calories that we eat and unlocks the door to fat cells and says, here, we're going to store this for later because a famine is going to come, it always has in the past, and we'll be ready. We'll have our batteries charged. So when insulin levels are high, trying to deliver this, one of the things that most people don't know is that a high insulin level prevents fat cells from releasing fats back into the bloodstream. And think about it, if you're trying to put something into storage with a moving van, you certainly wouldn't want another guy with a different moving van taking what you put into storage out. And that's actually a great design. So when insulin levels are high, like most of us, unfortunately, we can put fat into storage, but that insulin blocks fat from coming out. Well, we can run on both sugar and free fatty acids or ketones, and we should be just like a hybrid car. If we run out of sugar, if our blood sugar drops, instantly those fat cells should start releasing free fatty acids into our bloodstream, and we can run on those. Our mitochondria go, great, I'm now using fats that's been stored, wonderful, I'm perfect. But the vast majority of us have a high insulin level. So when we stop eating and our blood sugar starts to go low, our insulin level is still high. And so even though we would like to get to all that fat, the high insulin level prevents that from happening. It's literally water everywhere and not a drop to drink. Okay, so what happens when we try to do intermittent fasting or meal skipping is that our blood sugar drops and we get hangry, we get grumpy, we get a headache, and we get really hungry. So that when we start eating, our brain says, hey, I gotta have sugar. Get me sugar. I am literally starving to death. And so what happens to everyone is that we crave carbohydrates because our brain says, that's what I need. And so you could be skipping a meal while still metabolically inflexible, but you in general overeat, and you overeat primarily on carbohydrates. And I see this all the time in my patients who are really trying hard to follow an intermittent fasting program, but they just don't realize that as long as their insulin levels are elevated, they're going to have a really hard time making it through this period of not eating. And when they finally start eating, they almost invariably overeat. Now, there's one other solution that most people, unfortunately, are not aware of. So you can't get to all that fat that you've stored when your insulin level is high. But there's another option, and it's a bad option. You can break down muscle to provide glucose, and it's called gluconeogenesis. So if your insulin level is high and you can't get to that fat, your body instead will actually start cannibalizing your muscle to get the glucose that it needs to keep running. What's so bad about that? Well, remember, muscle in general is what your insulin sells the food you eat to. And if you got lots of customers, lots of muscle, then it's an easy sale and insulin doesn't have to go up. A recent example of this is many of you have heard about this miracle weight loss drug, Ozempic, and its cousins. And it's given away like water in Los Angeles. I see it every day. The problem is that the studies done on Ozempic weight loss shows that 50% of the weight loss that's achieved is lack of muscle. In other words, muscle mass going down accounts for 50% of the weight loss. And so it's no wonder that when people stop that drug, their weight balloons, because now you don't have as many customers to sell the food you ate, and it goes right into fat. And so the same thing happens when we try to muscle through not eating with a high insulin level. We're literally stealing protein from our muscles to make blood sugar. So it's a double whammy. So what does all this have to do with fasting? Well, if you're metabolically flexible, your body works like a hybrid car. And it switches over literally instantaneously when you run out of gas, glucose. You just start burning battery power in your fat. And because your insulin's low, you just switch back and forth. But when your insulin level's high, you literally sputter to a stop or start stealing from your muscles. And when you start eating, you are ravenously hungry and you overeat. Some of my patients say, well, but I'm going to eat lectin-free foods or lectin-light foods and I'll be fine. And so they eat a bag of cassava chips or they eat a bag of plantain chips because they're so hungry, and they come in and we look at their results and they're not losing weight and their triglycerides are elevated and they still have an elevated insulin, and we go through their diet and they're shocked when I show them the carbohydrate content of a bag of cassava chips or a bag of plantain chips. And they go, but there's no lectins in that. And I said, yeah, but there's still carbohydrates. And this actually proves to you that your brain is telling you to seek these things out. And when we finally break through that, just because something's lectin-free doesn't mean it's a safe food to eat if we're trying to lower insulin levels, then we actually make some progress. All right, now you're saying, well, what the heck am I supposed to do? I'm like most Americans. I'm insulin resistant. I'm metabolically inflexible. Help! Well, as I explained in the Keto Code, becoming metabolically flexible is not as difficult as you think. So, first of all, MCT oil or powder. So MCTs are unlike any other fat. MCTs are absorbed directly through the wall of our gut, and they go directly to our liver, where they're made into ketones. And ketones, you and your brain and your mitochondria can use as a fuel, even though there's no glucose. So this is a really good trick to get you through these anxious times. As I mentioned before, women do better with MCT powders in general. MCT oils give a lot of women a queasy stomach and even loose bowel movements, even diarrhea. So plenty of MCT oils. Try to get C8 MCTs, and please, coconut oil is not going to do the job for you. Most of the fats in coconut oil are not MCTs, and I see this mistake made all the time. people see that MCT oil is from coconut oil, so they assume that coconut oil has a lot of MCTs. It doesn't. And you will not get the benefit by using coconut oil. You'll get the benefit by using MCT oil. Now, how about diet? The problem is when you're doing these sorts of programs, you want to eat more protein because you can take that protein and break it down into glucose without affecting your muscle mass. Also, nuts are a great source of protein, and nuts also really are satiating, and you can get through this program. Now, muscle strength training is actually one of the best ways to increase your metabolically flexible mitochondria. The more muscle mass you make by strength training, the lower your insulin levels go. And remember, 70% of your muscle mass is in your butt and your thighs. So when you go to the gym, concentrate on lower body exercising. And you don't even need to go to the gym. Like I say, take some exercise snacking breaks. Brush your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes. Do squats and deep knee bends while you're brushing your teeth. You're going to use those deep muscles to do it. Do a plank, do a modified plank. You'll actually use almost all of your muscles to do a plank or a push-up. Hot therapy like a sauna builds flexibility. Cold therapy like taking a cold shower or just even a 15-30 second blast of cold after your shower will activate mitochondrial uncoupling. Polyphenols. The more polyphenols you get in your diet, the more metabolically flexible you become. And there's a lot of foods that have MCT oil, like goat and sheep cheeses and goat and sheep yogurts. So all of these tricks will get you metabolically flexible.
It's no secret that maintaining muscle health is absolutely crucial for a long, healthy life. One way you can boost muscle strength and endurance for overall well-being is with urolithin A. Urolithin A is one of the pioneering postbiotics that's making waves. It's like a cellular power-up that revamps your body's energy grid to optimize your vitality. My go-to for urolithin A is MitoPure from Timeline Nutrition. Their dedication to urolithin A research is unmatched, and their products are NSF certified for sports. Timeline offers MitoPure in 3 fantastic formats that suit every lifestyle. There's the berry powder, protein punch, and for those busy days, the soft gels offer a convenient grab-and-go option. Timeline is extending a special offer. Get 10% off your first MitoPure order by visiting timelinenutrition.com/Gundry and using the code Gundry at checkout. That's TIMELINEUTRITION.com/Gundry. Did you know that around 70 million U.S. residents were put under air quality alerts this year alone due to the wildfire smoke from Canada? Wildfires release a multitude of pollutants into the air that can irritate your respiratory tract, resulting in coughing, wheezing, chest tightness, and shortness of breath. It can also have serious long-term effects. How can you protect yourself against the brutal wildfire season to come? Try the air purifier that captured the attention of CNN, Money, ABC, and more. Air Doctor filters out ultra-fine dangerous contaminants so your lungs don't have to. Their Ultra HEPA filter has been independently tested to remove 99.99% of harmful particles like smoke, bacteria, viruses, pollen, and mold. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't love it, just send it back for a refund minus shipping. So head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code GUNDRY And depending on the model, you'll receive up to 39% off or up to $300 off. Lock this special offer by going to AIRDOCTORPRO.com and use promo code Gundry. Looking for a new way to get your electrolytes this summer? Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix born from the growing research revealing that optimal health outcomes occur at sodium levels 2 to 3 times government recommendations. Each stick pack delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients. Element is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore health through hydration, and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those following keto, low-carb, whole food, or paleo diets. As always, Element offers no questions asked refunds on all orders. Element came up with a fantastic offer for us. Just go to drinklmnt.com and use promo code Gundry. In a world full of technology, we should all be protecting ourselves from cell-damaging EMFs, ELFs, and RFs. What better way to do that than with Bone Charge? Founded on science and inspired by nature, Bone Charge is a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. Bone Charge offers a range of anti-radiation and EMF mitigating products, such as EMF protection earphones, laptop maps, blankets, hats, and harmonizing stickers. Bone Charge also offers other wellness solutions like blue light glasses, 100% blackout sleep masks, and flicker and blue light free light bulbs, all backed by science. Bone Charge ships worldwide in rapid time with easy returns and exchanges. Go to bonecharge.com/Gundry and use coupon code Gundry to save 15%. That's BONCHARGE.com/Gundry and use coupon code Gundry to save 15%.
Now, when you think of coffee, you might think of a milky, sugary frappe of some sort. You might think latte or cappuccino. They're everywhere these days. If you think that's normal, sorry folks, you're wrong. In most other areas of the world, cultures actually get the benefits of coffee because they don't add anything to it, including milk. Now, there's 2 reasons you're actually drinking coffee. Caffeine, that's probably obvious, and the polyphenols in coffee, which may not be obvious. Now, coffee, because of the caffeine and because of the polyphenols, helps uncouple your mitochondria. And I've written an entire book about how important it is for your health to uncouple your mitochondria. Basically, make your mitochondria work less hard and tell your mitochondria to divide and make more of themselves to share the workload. That's what uncoupling does. And caffeine and the polyphenols in coffee are both great ways to do that. The other recent evidence is that polyphenols are actually some of the favorite food of your gut buddies. And the more polyphenols that you add to your diet, the more diverse and happy your gut buddies become. So polyphenols are actually a prebiotic. Now, unfortunately, when you add milk to your coffee, the proteins in milk bind to those polyphenols, and they're unfortunately totally unavailable to feed your gut buddies. They basically become worthless. So what do? Well, let me give you an example of what not to do that's actually staring us in front of our faces. There are several cultures that add milk to tea, like the British, and I trained in London for a year, so that is something they do. And there are several cultures that do not, like the Japanese and Chinese. Now, only the Japanese and Chinese actually get a benefit from the tea because the milk proteins have not bound up the polyphenols. Sadly, the British have lousy longevity, and the Japanese and Chinese have fantastic longevity, and one of the factors is the fact that they're not binding the polyphenols in their tea. Sadly, it's even been shown that this affects blueberries that you mix into yogurt. Binding the blueberry polyphenols with the yogurt makes them, unfortunately, useless. Now, some people will tell you that adding milk helps to prevent staining of their teeth due to the polyphenol binding. Please do not listen to this. In this case, staining your teeth is a good thing. And if you're super concerned about it, just use a straw or brush your teeth or do an oil pull after you drink your favorite beverage. Now, America loves coffee. If you must add a creamer to your coffee, use something like coconut milk creamers or macadamia nut creamers, but buyer beware. Macadamia nut milk, and I won't mention the brand, now has added pea protein to make it more creamy. And as you probably know, pea protein is loaded with lectins. However, there are some macadamia creamers, not milks, that don't have that pea protein added. So read the label carefully. Coconut milk is always a great idea because it will not bind to those polyphenols. Now, I see far too many people trying to be dairy-free and adding almond or oat milk to their coffee. Quite frankly, they're destroying their gut and their health. Now, why? Because almond milk, unfortunately, is made from the peels, with the peels and the whole almonds. The peel actually contains a lectin. And as I've written about before, and you'll see in the new upcoming book, that almonds and almond flour are some of the most food-sensitive producing compounds that my patients react to. Sorry about that. But what about oat milk? Well, oats and oat milk have become trendy. But I urge you to go on the internet and look for a recent YouTube posting of a young woman who was wearing a continuous glucose monitor and went to Starbucks and had a oat latte and traced her blood sugar levels. They shot through the roof, and then a half-hour crash down into the 40s or 50s, and she literally had to be woken up from her nap. So this stuff is just pure, unadulterated poison, sugar poison, and as I've released in previous videos, oats, even organic oats in this country, have levels of glyphosate, Roundup, and another cancer-causing chemical in them, according to Consumer Reports and the Environmental Working Group. It is not a healthy option. If you gotta have a creamer, use a coconut milk or macadamia nut creamer that virtually has no protein. Or look for a number of the popular MCT creamers out there, which don't use, for the most part, these problem makers. Now, interestingly enough, as you know, I spend a lot of time in Italy, and I've always been fascinated that the Italians may have a cappuccino in the morning, but almost all baristas will cut you off from cappuccinos about 10 o'clock in the morning and only agree to serve you espressos, or if you must have a little foam, a espresso macchiato. Now, a macchiato in Italy is just a little dollop of foam on the top. It is not the crazy macchiatos that you get at a place like Starbucks, which is this sugary, ridiculous drink. So even the Italians understand that they really don't want to mess with a good thing for most of the day. Now, some of the world's longest living people with the longest longevity, actually boil their coffee all day and then drink it black. Why are they so smart? It turns out that the longer the coffee grounds are exposed to the water, the longer the polyphenols are taken up in the beverage, in the coffee you're drinking. So boiling it all day, as strange as that seems, is actually a really smart idea. Now, the other thing that surprises people is you're drinking coffee for two purposes: caffeine and the polyphenols. The more dark you brew the coffee, like French roast or dark roast, the less polyphenols are in that coffee. So if you're going to buy coffee for roasting or for drinking, try to buy the lightest roast. Surprisingly, everybody thinks that the darker the coffee, the better it is, the more polyphenols, but it's exactly the opposite. You want light roast, worst case scenario, medium roast. Stay away from the extra dark roast like French roast, and you'll be doing yourself a favor by giving your gut buddies more of the polyphenols that you're actually drinking coffee for. And for goodness sakes, stop putting milk in your coffee. It does not do a body good, and it does not allow your gut buddies to get the benefits that they're looking for, and in turn, they'll help you. So have a cup of joe, but have it black, folks. If you're really miserable, add my new favorite sweetener, allulose, to it. Add a macadamia or coconut creamer, or add an MCT creamer, and you'll get the smoothness you want with all the drawbacks. Everyone thinks that butter is a great source of butyric acid, a short-chain fatty acid, which is really great for you. Wrong. Butter is not a great source of butyric acid. Yes, butter is named after butyric acid, but there really is very little butyric acid in butter. Number two, most butter comes from A1 cows. So even if you're getting grass-fed butter, it's probably from an A1 cow, and that butter has casein A1 in it. And casein A1 is that protein that a great number of people and a great number of my patients react to as a foreign substance. So how do you know which is which? Well, most cows in the United States are Holsteins, the black and white cow. Irish butter is from Holstein cows. So even if it says grass-fed, it's the wrong breed of cow. If you can find butter from Guernsey cows, and it does exist, or Jersey cows, which have about half as much casein A1 as Holstein cows, you're better off. Or find A2 butter, grass-fed, and it is increasingly becoming available in the United States. Also, Southern European butters, primarily in France, Switzerland, and Italy, are almost exclusively from A2 cows. Finally, goat butter, which is available, is an A2 butter. So if you gotta have butters, that's the way to go. But not so fast. That's not my only issue with butter, and that is the type of cow. There's a very recent study out of Norway that was reported at the first of this year They took people who had stable angina. Now, many people have heard of angina. I deal with angina every day. Stable angina is people who have known blockages in their coronary arteries, and when they exercise, they get chest pain, angina, or heaviness in their chest, or their arm aches, etc. And when they stop, that pain goes away. And when they start, that pain comes back. And it's very predictable, and it stays the same day after day. And there's not a lot, quite frankly, to worry about in people with stable angina. So in this study, they took people starting with stable angina, and they looked at how their stable angina progressed to unstable angina. And unstable angina, as the name implies, means that all of a sudden it's kind of happening all the time, or they have a heart attack. That's called acute coronary syndrome, and that's kind of how you end up in the emergency room. So going from stable angina to unstable angina is not a good thing. They looked at 3 parameters in their diet. They looked at butter consumption, they looked at milk consumption, and they looked at cheese consumption. And here's the mic drop. Butter consumption correlated directly and as the biggest cause of turning stable angina to unstable angina. The chart was off the chart. Butter, number 1, correlated from stable angina going to unstable angina. In other words, the more butter they ate, the worse it got. Number 2, milk. Milk drinking was right behind butter. Butter was by far number 1. Milk was number 2. And that's actually what made the news. Dairy is bad for you if you have heart disease. But what really didn't make the news was cheese consumption. It turns out that the more cheese people ate, the better their angina got, and the less likely they were to have unstable angina. Exactly the opposite. Now, what the heck was that? Well, it turns out, as I've written about before, that cheese has fascinating compounds that are really, really good for your health. Primarily polyamines and the fermentation products that go into making cheese. Cheese is a fermented food. And one of the interesting things, 4 out of the 5 blue zones, goat and cheese consumption is one of the major reasons why they have great health. This new study, once again, puts butter consumption way up on the warning list, and cheese consumption, particularly true fermented cheese, not cheese products like we see in the United States, as probably pretty doggone good for you. So one of the reasons I don't recommend the coffee and butter trend is the butter in your coffee. On the other hand, olive oil and MCT oil in your coffee is a much better choice for your health. And so get rid of the butter in your coffee and just go for MCT oil, MCT creamers, and or olive oil, and you're going to be much better off. Okay, so to summarize, if you were to eat a lot of butter every single day, you would be doing your heart a major disservice. But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it in moderation. And what do I mean by that? Quite frankly, I and my wife really don't use butter in the United States at all. We're much happier using olive oil and perilla oil and sesame oil on almost everything we eat and drink. And so butter really doesn't have much of a place in our diet. In Europe, particularly in Southern Europe, where we spend our time, butter is actually incredibly rare on the menu. Olive oil is the most prevalent. And you often, believe it or not, have to ask for butter. And luckily, the butter is grass-fed. Some chefs, particularly in Italy, will use butter in their recipes with olive oil mixed together, and that's where we'll have it, and we view it as a special treat. Well, what about baking and cooking? Well, as you know, it is not a health food. You can easily substitute butter with perilla or olive oil for baking. If you really want butter in this country, look for the goat butter, the Italian butter, the French butters, and you can find them. You can even find Italian butter in Costco. But, what about the MCTs in butter? Well, I'm sorry, butter is not a great source of medium-chain triglycerides. Medium-chain triglycerides only account for about 6 to 8% of the fats in butter, and that's not much. So if you think you're getting a huge boost in MCTs from butter, think again. The other interesting thing is that most of those MCTs in butter are actually the longer chain MCTs, C12, which has no ketogenic effect. So in other words, you're not getting the supposed health benefits from butter that you think you're getting. If you really want to get benefit, think about using goat and sheep yogurts or cheeses, and I even have a recipe in Unlocking the Keto Code for a cappuccino, where we actually put goat yogurt or goat cheese blended in coffee along with MCT oil, and you're way ahead of the game. Finally, take this to the bank. Irish butter has a picture of a black and white cow on the label. And bless their hearts, they're trying to tell you that that's the wrong breed of cow. Thank you for doing that. Talk about truth in advertising. That's it. Stay away from the Irish butter.
Hey, this is Dr. Drew, and I'd like to invite all of you to subscribe to the Dr. Drew podcast. We are very proud of what we're doing there at that podcast. I am interviewing some of the most interesting people you could ever want to talk to. Just whatever I find fascinating, whether it's a smart person or an expert in a field that I'm interested in, or maybe I'm not even interested in. I'm only interested because I've heard them speak and become intrigued. I think you'll be intrigued as well. We get deep into topics that are quite important to the current age. Things like cognitive dissonance, cognitive distortions. How does our mind work? We talk about everything at the Dr. Drew podcast that is of real relevance. We get all the way into deep physics and all sorts of stuff. But trust me, it's all very accessible. It's very interesting. Headaches. If you're even interested in learning about headaches, we get there. We go to the interesting topics of the day. Please join us at the Dr. Drew podcast.
Now it's time for the question of the week. This question of the week comes from Woody42069 on YouTube regarding my recent video on coffee. Great video. Just to confirm, I can add olive oil and MCT oil and still have the full benefits you've described? That's absolutely right, Woody. The great thing is MCT oil and or olive oil won't mess with the health benefits of coffee. In fact, olive oil has its own unique polyphenols, so it's a 1-2 punch. Now it's time for the review of the week. This review of the week comes from Jorge Cueva, 1679 on YouTube. Thanks, Doc. Best teacher in the world. Great job. Keep going. The benefits I get from your advice have no price. My health and life have changed for good since I followed you. Wish you the best. Well, Jorge, thank you so much. That's why I do this, because you deserve to have great health. And unfortunately, most of the things we've been told through our lives predict bad health. As I always say, sickness is good for business. So I'm going to keep doing it, and thank you so much for writing in and telling me it's appreciated, because I'm Dr. Gundry, and I'm always looking out for you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dr. Gundry podcast. If you did, please share this with family and friends. You never know how one of these health tips can completely transform someone's life when you take the time to share it with them. There's also the Dr. Gundry podcast YouTube channel, where we have tens of thousands of free health insights that can help you and your loved ones live a long, vital